Folks, welcome to Chewing the Gristle, the podcast with yours truly, Gregory S. Koch, Esquire, also known as Gregory Kochery in some circles. It's brought to you by our friends at Fishman transducers, if you will, and it features just random conversations with various guitar and music friends, just kind of shooting the breeze or chewing the gristle, if you will. Due to my road work, we're going to stay away from seasons, but we're going to drop these as they become available. We appreciate you tuning in these years. We're going to keep on doing this as long as we can, folks. If you're enjoying them, we're enjoying them. Can you dig it? Let's chew the gristle. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, once again, we are doing that crazy chewing the gristle thing today with an amazing guitarist and artist in general, Lyle Workman. You've heard him on everything from the soundtracks that he did for 40-Year-Old Virgin and Superbad. You've seen him on stage with Sting and Sarah McLachlan. Just a brilliant musician. Today, we are chewing the gristle with Lyle Workman. Come on, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the time is gum. The time is gum, and it's so delicious and chewable. We have gathered around the gristle fire for another convivial conversation, this time with a legend. This guy is, when I'm surveying his body of work, I'm a little intimidated to the point of feeling like an idiot. And then I totally screwed up on trying to get this doggone thing started today, folks. It's a humiliating day for Drade. But all I'm going to say is I'm here with Lyle Workman. You've heard him on countless recordings, soundtracks, but just a magnificent guitar player and cool cat. Thanks so much for taking time today to hang with us, Lyle.
I am so honored to speak with you because I am in awe of you, and I have been for so long. So it's so nice to talk to you. We spoke briefly at a NAMM show sometime, I'm just going to say, estimate in between, sometime around in between 3 or 50 years, somewhere in that time space. Right. We spoke briefly, and that was it.
Well, let's talk about we can talk about whatever we want, doggone it. This is just a impromptu jaw about. I don't think jaw about is even a thing, but it is now.
I think that should be that's a title for a record right there.
But, I was hanging with our mutual buddy, Woody Mankowski the other day, and he mentioned it. I was like, I've got to get Lyle on this podcast so we could shoot the breeze. Man. And I remember encountering you at that NAMM show a few years back, and then just seeing some and hearing some amazing playing online, and then doing the deep dive. It's just like, do you ever sleep? I mean, what the hell's going on, Lyle? You've created such a huge body of work. And then what freaked me out is the whole bourgeois tag thing. Yeah. It's like I heard that song and I'm like, I totally know that song. And so describe for us, like, what got you started doing what you do in terms of, were you always an LA guy? Were you from somewhere out in California, in Sacramento, and then moved to LA? Where does it start?
It starts in San Jose, California. And it's kind of funny when I tell people San Jose, it's usually kind of a conversation stopper. I don't know what it is. Like, oh, where are you from? San Jose, like, it's crickets. So then I started saying, well, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. Like, oh, okay, that's the response that gets. But anyways, San Jose, and then played in bands, high school, stuff like that. And then joined Brent Bourgeois and Larry Tag for their group, Bourgeois Tag. They were based in Sacramento. And so in the mid-'80s, I know, going back, I relocated to Sacramento to be in the band. We did 2 records on Island. The last one was produced by Todd Rundgren, which was amazing. And we had a single that I'd written with Brent Bourgeois, one of the central songwriters, and it was called "I Don't Mind at All," and that was a bit of a hit. We did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Yes,
you
I
did.
saw it.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. What was interesting is seeing remember the Alpo Dog commercials that Ed used to do.
Yes.
Well, I saw why the dogs were so ravenous for the food, because they would do a few takes and the trainer would put his hand down the dog's throat to make him throw up the food. Yeah. So every time the food was put down, the dog was like, oh, no. So it wouldn't, reject the food, the Alpo. But yeah, that was pretty wild, doing that.
So how many years ago was that?
That was 1988.
Yeah, I totally remember that song. I mean, it was like, I was like, oh my God, I totally and that's a pretty fine little acoustic part on that doggone song. That is not to be trifled with.
It was a kind of a departure from the sound of our band, because we were more about sort of funk pop kind of thing.
Right.
But I had this little ditty that I put down on a cassette for Brent. Some other ideas that I thought more suited for the band, but I put down this little thing and hummed a melody, and he goes, I like that one. And I said, all right. And that's so it ended up being the single, and then that got us on. We did, like I said, Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. We did American Bandstand with Dick Clark, which was wild.
Yeah.
We did Top of the Pops. At that time, they had one here, and we did the Top of the Pops in England. And I remember that show was Not Was. Remember that band? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
They were on that show. And what else we did? A show called The Wogan Show, which was a big kind of like Johnny Carson type show in England. And then sort of the equivalent in Germany and some other places. So it was pretty fun time.
So prior to that, what was your training like as coming up as a musician? Did you go to school for music, or you just kind of self-taught? What kind of led you there?
Well, mostly self-taught. I had gone to a community college in Saratoga and just for 2 years and just took music classes. I decided I'm not going to, I wasn't really looking for a degree, but I just wanted to study music, and had a really good teacher, a jazz improvisational teacher there. And then I studied harmony and composition and stuff like that for 2 years. But that's all I did. I didn't do any of the academic stuff. So that never got me a degree. And then the band I was in started working a lot. So I was like, okay, well, it looks like I'm working.
Yeah, it's kind of, I remember saying to my dad, he's like, you got to get your degree. I go, listen, the degree would be in jazz guitar performance. And I don't think at some point they go, you play good and all, but can I see your degree?
Yeah, we've never had to produce a degree for any job we've ever done. What's your job? Yeah, but so that's kind of what happened, and things just sort of took off from there.
So once you hooked up with kind of Todd Rundgren, was that kind of like the next rung in the
exactly?
Quest?
So he had produced our second record, and he asked our band to be his backup band for a record he was doing. And as a matter of fact, it was after one of the sessions with Todd. Now, these sessions were pretty interesting because everything was done in the studio live. So there were no overdubs. We would just record. We'd go to the studio. We would learn a song. We would rehearse it, and then we'd record, several takes. And we'd do that with, I think, maybe 3 songs. And we did it a series of days that comprised that record. But during the night before one of the sessions with Todd, our band, Bourgeois Tag, broke up. So it was a little odd. We showed up at the session, and I was the first one there. And I said, Todd, if you notice any weird vibes today, it's because we broke up last night. Yeah. And
that might cause a little disturbance in the force for a recording session.
It was okay. It was time. It was fine. It was fine for me, particularly because, with Bourgeois Tag, I was a bit like the George Harrison. I'd have one song on a record kind of thing, and I just felt like there was a lot more in me. So I was ready to move on and do different things. And so what happened is 3 of us from Bourgeois Tag stayed with Todd for another few years. We did a couple of years we had 2 records and some touring during that time. And that was just really exciting because, Todd Rundgren, what can you say, Right.
So in that point in time, did you ever get to fondle the
Absolutely,
cream
I
guitar?
do. I'll have to send you a picture. I have a picture of me holding the guitar, and we were in Japan, and someone had made a replica of that guitar and given it to Todd. So we did. We played that. We played those guitars on one song. I can't remember what it was, but he let me play the one. And it was okay. It wasn't. It was okay.
Right. It just was what he used at the time.
Yeah,
and that was it.
I didn't think it was a very special guitar. I mean, it felt the neck had, the whole thing was painted, hand painted, but you can kind of feel it in the back of the neck, the paint. It's kind of uneven and stuff. Right. So it was a little odd, but I was just happy to hold it, man. I mean, look at the history that thing had. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. There were some epic jams played on that guitar for sure. So speaking of, what kind of stuff were you, when you first came up, what was the stuff you were listening to and kind of inspired you, and where were your kind of sights set on what did you want to do musically, or were you just kind of an open book, like, I like this, I like that? Let's see what happens.
think it's I'm sure like you, it's everything that influenced us during those formative years. For me, it starts with the Beatles. Everything started with the Beatles. And as I was learning how to play guitar, teaching myself Beatles songs and listening to stuff on the radio. Now we're talking, late 60s stuff. That's how far back I go. And so in terms of guitar, George Harrison, and then like Creedence Clearwater Revival and stuff that was on the radio. But the big turning point for me was someone's parent took me and some of my friends to see the Woodstock movie. And so prior to that time, I thought a good guitar lead player was John Fogerty or George Harrison. Maybe Purple Haze was. I'm sure Purple Haze was on the radio, but I didn't hear it for some reason. So, and I'm getting pretty good. I've got a good ear. I'm not taking lessons or anything, but I can play some Beatles songs pretty well. And so you go to that movie, and oh my gosh, Hendrix. And what? And Alvin Lee, I'm going home 10 years after. Pete Townsend, so I didn't know that the instrument that I was playing was capable of that. And I just remember being stunned by the whole thing. I left the theater and I couldn't even speak. So then I got the Woodstock record, and put it on my turntable, and 16 speed, learned how to play I'm Going Home, taught myself that, learned different stuff from that record. And that sort of brought me into the rock world, and of where there was more, heroic, or whatever you want to call it, more muscular. Yeah, on guitar playing, I was completely transfixed. Hendrix was just definitely the one. That was
right. Absolutely.
Just boy. What can you say about that guy?
And also, I just was thinking, because I scoured that Woodstock. I had it on later on. I'd have it on VHS tape. I'd just go over and over and over. But the other one too, I mean, all the things you mentioned, but also the Soul Sacrifice, Carlos Santana thing on there was another one. It's like,
man, all that stuff. And I remember learning licks. There's on the record. It wasn't in the movie, but it was Paul Butterfield's blues band with Buzzy Feeden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I learned that he does like an incredible solo. And I remember meeting him like decades later, and I played him the lick. I go, I stole this from you. And he goes, I don't remember that. And I went, oh, I do. I still remember it. But yeah, that was a really monumental jump from where I was as a beginning guitar player novice to really starting to play. And in fact, this led to, in high school, senior year, a friend of mine wrote in my yearbook, Lyle, you are truly the best guitarist in the district.
Excellent.
I was like, wow, that's a lot of high schools in this area. So anyway, the best guitarist in the district. Wow.
District-wide.
But again, it's about Hendrix. And then around, not too many years later, after that, I was still in high school. I was staying up to watch In Concert. Remember that show, In Concert? Don Kirshner's Rock.
Don Kirshner's Rock Concert.
And I saw on the TV guide it was going to be Johnny Winter, who I was really into Johnny Winter, because another record that was absolutely destroyed me was Edgar Winter, White Trash, Roadwork with Rick Derringer. That solo in Tobacco Road, man. Come on.
Yep.
So I was way into Johnny Winter, Rick Derringer. And Mahavishnu was going to be on that night as well. So that was that was the next big jump of like, what? What's this guy? His hair is short. What the hell's what's that about? He's wearing, he's got the white, guru outfit, and he's got the double neck. And it was another one of those moments where I just, what's happening? That guitar can do that. So then I got me into the whole fusion world, which led to, Mahavishnu and Focus. John Ackerman was huge for, Hocus Pocus and all those records. And eventually from the fusion, Genesis, progressive rock. And then, why are these guys talking about the jazz guys? What's that all about? So then you discover, Wes Montgomery and Charlie Christian and Django Reinhardt was another big guy I got into. So it's all, it's the music of the day that leads you to the stuff that inspired that music. And so I'm sure a lot of this is right in line with what your
absolutely was. Music to my ears. So when did you end up? So after you get done with Bourgeois Tag and you're hanging out with Todd Rundgren, at one point are you in LA, kind of establishing a foothold there?
Well, so Todd Rundgren. So now we're going back to the early 1990s. After the Todd thing was over, I guess the next biggest gig I did was with this songwriter Charles Thompson, known as Frank Black or Black Francis from the Pixies. And so I started playing with him, and that led to about 5 years of touring and records. And he was based in LA, and I was living in Marin County at the time, but I just wasn't doing anything in Marin County other than being in his band and touring. So my wife and I moved down to Los Angeles in 1996. And so that's what brought me to LA. And, the greatest thing ever, because it led to all kinds of opportunities, meeting more musicians and eventually studio work and eventually soundtrack work and film scoring. I'm kind of condensing everything very quickly in one sentence, but that's the thumbnail sketch.
It's crazy the amount of stuff that you've done in that regard. So I'm sure it's like anything. It's like, you're hanging out one day with one guy, say, hey, you ever done this? And next thing you know, you're doing something you didn't originally plan. Was like the whole soundtrack thing. I'm sure it was something you were like, oh, that'd be cool. But was it something you kind of were thinking like one day I'd like to do that? Or was it just kind of
the latter? Yeah. I'd never had any designs on being a film composer. But what had happened is, one of the things I was doing when I first moved down to LA is I met this musician who was writing music for commercials, and he was doing stuff for an agency, and so they had me as just as a session musician coming in and playing on their jingles, but they knew that I'd written a song. I had written that song, I Don't Mind at All. And so, well, you write music. Would you like to try to write music for some of these commercials? An agency would get awarded a job to like Nike or Reebok or something. And then the agency would have 3 or 4 guys within that agency to demo stuff up in the hopes of getting the job. And so I'd done that and got some of those jobs. So I did a Nike ad, and I did a Cadillac thing and a few other things. So that was my first experience of writing music to picture. And then the next step was I had worked with a producer, a Bay Area producer, Matt Wallace, who did Faith No More, their big record, and he lived in LA.
I know Matt. I did
great.
I did a thing with Matt with Willie Porter years
right
ago.
On.
And
he's amazing.
He's great.
Great guy, hilarious. And so he hired me to be a session player for a band that needed a guitar player, and one of the central songwriters of that band was really good friends with John Favreau and Vince Vaughn. They asked their buddy to score an independent film, and I had worked with this musician. I brought him in to do some stuff with me for some of these jingles because he was really good at programming drums and stuff like that I didn't really do. So when they asked him to do their movie, he thought, well, maybe I should pair with someone that's got some other skills that's a little bit more outside of, or could be in addition to what he did. So he asked me to do it. And so that was my first movie score. And it was a movie called Made. It was after Swingers was John's first one. And then the next one was called Made. So I'd done one movie. So I had that under my belt. And a few years after that, I had been working with a film composer, again, as a session musician. And he called me one day and he said that his wife, who was an executive at Universal Pictures, she called her husband and said, Ed Shermer is the composer's name, and said, Harry here, vice president of music, needs some guitar work for a personal project. And so Ed put me in touch with this executive at Universal Pictures. Next thing I know, the guys in my studio, they basically doing him a favor. But knowing that he was going to be here, I put a CD together in advance of some of the stuff I'd done in Jingles and some instrumental music I'd written.
Sure.
Because by then I'd already made a few instrumental records. So I just kind of compiled some music and put it on a CD and sent it off with this guy. And he called me back, goes, man, I really like what you do. And I've got this movie. Would you like to submit some additional music for it? And so I did that. And that was a movie called Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell and
I
it's a soccer
that.
movie.
And Mike Ditka.
Yeah, exactly. And Robert Duvall, who just unfortunately just passed away. So I got my music in that, but one of the producers was Judd Apatow. And so right around that time, Judd signed a directorial deal with Universal, and the Universal executive championed me for his movie, and I got a couple scenes, I demoed them, and I got the job. And that first movie was 40-Year-Old Virgin. So that movie was 2 weeks #1. And like everyone's like, well, who's this guy? Who's Lyle Workman? Because I didn't have an agent at all. And I actually tried getting an agent after Made that, but no one would speak to me. But after 40-Year-Old Virgin, after I signed that deal with them to do that, every agency in Los Angeles wanted to sign me.
Of course, because they're working already
exactly.
Been done.
They wanted their cut. And so that I did that movie, and that was followed up by Superbad, which was also 2 weeks #1. So I basically jumped a lot of steps to be in that world. And that launched my career as a film composer.
Well, if you don't mind talking about a little bit about the business side of that whole thing, because, I remember, back in the day, the jingle thing was great because you'd get like a session fee, but then you'd get residuals every time it played. And if it was a national commercial, I mean, it could be some juicy currency. And so I would imagine with movies, is it like a lot of times when you're breaking in, is it a work for hire thing, or is there always kind of a back end thing, or does it always kind of fluctuate?
There's always back end, and luckily for me, I got in a time when it was really good to be a composer, because it was all basically fee deals where you get a chunk of money. In the case of 40-Year-Old Virgin, it was a big movie with a $20 million budget and a very healthy fee deal. Like, I could not believe the amount of money I was making, and it was just money just for my fee, and then they paid for everything else, all the expenses, studio.
So that was just like, here's some dough, and then we'll pay to make it all as well.
Yeah, that's kind of gone away for the most part. Most nowadays, it's just, here's a chunk of money, you have to pay for everything. And unless you're Danny Elfman or John Williams, or I'm sure they still get fee deals. But but yeah, there's always back end. They take publishing, but you get your writers, and for movies that are big, it's anytime it's on TV or it's you get money for that. So I start.
You get some of that sweet money.
Based on the success of them all the movies combined that I've done have made over $1 billion at the box office. And so they're still playing on HBO and all those streaming networks. So a good chunk of my income is still residuals, I have to say. So that's been really good and really changed our lives completely. That world. And I still do it. It's not like it used to be. I don't have the same amount of work, but there was a good 10 years of not only movies but movie and TV, and to where I had assistants and even a couple of people helping out with some of the writing. Because it was just too much work. But you never say no. You never turn it down because you're too busy. You find out a way to do it. Figure out a way to do it.
Right.
Even if you have to bring in help.
Well, let's talk, if you don't mind, a little bit about your session stuff. As a session guitarist, I've talked to a few people about this, there's the sessions where they hire you because, they want, there's a lot of different stuff that has to be sight read with great aplomb. And then there's other they hire you because they just want you to paint colors, and the charts are very, the name of the chord and a couple of hash marks for the 4/4 time. Maybe some kicks are transcribed, maybe a line here and there. For the vast majority of your session work, were you like a unbelievable sight reader, or was it more you were a color guy brought in to add parts to things that were just kind of sketched out? Or was that a bit of both?
The last thing you said, 90% of the time. Because these are records, and people just want me to participate on the record, and we're not dealing with people writing dots on pages generally. But I did study. When I went to school, I learned how to read music. So I do read, and I would do dates with film composers that would have the dots on the page, and I would usually just say, "Can I see it in advance, please?" Because I can read, but I'm not super fast at it. So I'd make sure that I could do it, and at a certain point, I was getting more of that work, but I didn't really enjoy it because it was too much. I mean, to do a date with an orchestra and dots on a page, I wasn't really enjoying that much. So I would just say, maybe just give me the music in advance, or if you can't do that, then just hire someone else. So that I did more of that work back in the day, but not really anymore. Every now and again, I'll get that. But
I just was thinking of a story. I remember. Did you ever hang out with Paul Barrera at all from Little Feat? Okay. Well, I got to be friendly with him, and I'd sit in with the band every now and again. He was a good buddy. Anyway, so he was telling me about, it's like, every now and again I'd get hired to do sessions, and me and Fred Tackett would go and do sessions, and he goes, I couldn't write any music at all. And we'd get to a part, in the chart where it said Tacit, and I thought they just misspelled Tackett, and that was where he was playing.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God. Wow.
But yeah, it's always interesting because I don't know about you when you were younger, but especially the music school types, the teachers would be like, your sight reading if you're going to be a musician, your sight reading has to be so good that when you go into a session, they're not going to play it once through to make sure you can play it. They're going to play it once through to make sure the notes on the page are written correctly. And you're like, oh my God, if I ever get a session, I'm going to be shitting in my pants. And then I remember going in and just like, yeah, it wasn't quite that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Well, I think for us, I wanted to be in bands. I wanted to play, in band. I wanted to play my guitar. And that wasn't really, learning how to read dots on the page wasn't a prerequisite for that. I mean, all the people we listened to, they weren't doing that. So but nowadays I do tell people, if you want a career in music, you better learn how to read. Because it's just so hard to make a living as a musician. So, you got to do your own thing, or if you want to get money every week, either do your own thing or work with film composers, the guys who are doing music for TV or Jingles. You can do that. And the guys that, the few in LA that work all the time are, the handful of guys that are George Deerings and Andrew Sinowick is in the younger generation. He's an amazing guitar player. Do you know Andrew Sinowick by any chance? Oh, I'm going to have to turn you on to him. He's amazing. And he's a great reader and does a lot of that kind of work. So he stays busy because he can read his ass off, but he's a wicked player too. So, he's got it all. But
awesome.
Yeah. So, I tell people, you want to be an artist, but if you're really not that kind of person, then if you just want to provide a service as a guitar player, it really helps to learn how to read.
Absolutely. How about your studio chops when you first started doing all this stuff? Were you hip to all that stuff? You had to learn on the fly? Do you do a lot of that stuff on your own?
Ever since I was young, I had a little tape recorder. So if it was a little reel-to-reel, just recording myself playing guitar or trying to learn things, I always had some sort of form of technology. And so that just kept growing from a little reel-to-reel mono thing to, what was the first thing I got? I'm trying to remember now. I had a TAC 3340 reel-to-reel. Remember those? It had, you wait for it, sound on sound.
Yes.
Sound on sound. So you could record on one track, and then you had 4 tracks, and you could overdub. And so I had one of those when I was, 18 years old or something. And it just got more involved because I like to record myself. I like to write little instrumental things, and that led to an 8-track, that led to a 16-track, that led to ADATs, that led to D88s, that led to eventually to Pro Tools. So I've always had a way to record myself, which has been great because I've wanted to record my own stuff. And that's basically. And it was all out of need. I had the need for it. So it was never, I have to learn how to do this. It was, how do I get to record my own music? Well, I guess I better get a tape recorder.
Right.
And as my needs expanded, so did the gear.
Sure. And are you obsessed with it? Like always on Mic Quest and you know what I mean? Always getting the new discombobulator and so on and so forth?
Not anymore. No. It's just because after a while that just tires you out. It just robs you of all your expenses.
Right.
Any money you have is just going to go to a mic. Maybe 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago, I was looking at stuff, but I don't mess with it anymore. I have enough stuff to do all the things I would ever want to do in music.
Sure. It's fun to get to that point where, like, I really don't need any of the stuff to do the thing I really want to do, which is just to make music, not to be plagued by, I need this next thing. Of course, with guitars, though, that's always an issue because you may go for a little drought for a while, but then there's going to be something that's going to trip your trigger. And like right now, there's this 1959 Telecaster. It's a refin that I'm obsessed with. Wow. So after we get done with our little interview, I'm going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul to get that thing. But I saw a thing with you with your 63 Strat, and it freaked me out because I had a guitar exactly like that. And there was even a decal. And when you were playing, I was like, oh my God, is that my old guitar? Because there was literally a decal in the same place. But mine was a gal who was, instead of a cowgirl, it was like a snow vixen. She was kind of, but it was the same color, the stickers in the same spot. But I sold that guitar. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I think that's my guitar. And then I saw the sticker better. I'm like, that's weird because it's a similar sticker, but it's a gal like dressed up in winter regalia, and she's kind of leaning back, but it's in the same exact place. That's
crazy.
Same type of sticker.
Was it the same color though? Was it sonic blue?
It's like a sonic blue. It was a refin.
Yeah, so was mine.
But it was.
Yeah, where is it? You want to see it up close? Okay.
Yeah.
It's around here somewhere. I'll be right back.
Yes. Matter of fact, maybe I can find.
Here she be. Can you see it?
Yeah. That is so weird. It's literally the stickers from the same company, but it's just instead of a cowgirl, it's like a snow.
Oh, that's
vixen.
funny. Yeah, this was exactly how I bought it. It was a little vintage store in Campbell, California. I was on tour with Beck at the time. This is I say the year 2000. The year 2000.
Year 2000.
Yeah, it's a refin 63, and I fell in love with it. It was actually in underneath a glass case, and it wasn't for sale. And I talked the guy into it because I played him. I have to have this guitar. And I remember it was expensive. I thought it was expensive at that time. It was like $3,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
It's all there, except the refin and the decal. Yeah.
Awesome. I suppose it's been refretted at some point.
No, yeah.
Kidding.
The frets are kind of low, but I've just learned to live with it. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a great sounding guitar.
Is that still your main weapon of destruction?
No, more of a telly player these days.
Aha,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, I had Fender approached me. They wanted to build me a custom Telecaster, and
yes,
that's this guy right here, which is it's a thin line, but it's got the contours of a Strat. It's got the belly cut and the arm contour. They made me two of them, which blew my mind. And so one of them, after the fact, put in a Vega trem. And these are DC-90 Lawler pickups, which are really great. They're quiet and they sound amazing. They're more quiet than humbuckers, at least the humbuckers I have.
Nice.
And so the other thin line I have is the one that they made of the two. It just has the standard wide range humbuckers in it.
I see you've got a veritable plethora of juicy tube amplification devices back there. I see a Tone King Imperial. Yes. I see a Marshall. I see some divided by 13s.
I have a Comet Concord over that, which is an amazing amp. And, the funny thing, though, Greg, is that the last couple tours I've done, one was with Sarah McLachlan, and another one was Frank Black. These are over the last couple of years. Both were 30-year anniversary record tours.
Right.
Sarah's I did not participate in 30 years ago, but the Frank Black one I did play on. And for both tours, I went direct, man, Tonex. Yeah, in-ears, Tonex with amalgam audio captures, tone amp captures. And with the Tone King Imperial, exactly. That's exactly the capture I used for both those tours. So I was so intrigued with the sound of the capture that I went and got the amp. I found a used one. But I wanted to ask you about the Royalist, because I know that's what you...
Yes.
Is that what you're playing these days live? Or...
That's what I gig with.
I got to check it out.
Yeah, it's more of a Marshall thing than the Imperial, of course, is more like a deluxe reverb souped up. Whereas the Royalist, it's 2-channel and it's got attenuators for both
same thing
channels.
With the Imperial, which I love.
Right, exactly,
I love it.
Exactly. And so when I'm gigging live, I use it kind of on the GTM 45-ish setting, and I keep the master down kind of low. So it's just starting to give a little bit, and then I goose it with the pedals. But by the same token, if I'm in the studio, I'll crank that sumbitch up, and it sounds glorious. I mean, it'd be a cool amp if I wasn't using pedals, and I just wanted to go out to a gig and kind of go back and forth between like a clean sound or a lead sound, or even just kind of setting it on the lead sound and just turning the volume down like you did with old Marshalls, and having it's good for all of the above at any volume. And at 40 watt, I mean, the Imperial for me with my band, especially with my son and with Toby, you know, we're playing at pretty loud volumes, and the Imperial's just not enough. So the Royalist, you know, even though it's 40 watts, it's a loud 40 watts. So it
okay. And so you are using the gain, using the lead channel for your solo stuff, and just
No, actually, when I in the studio, I will. But when I play live, I just use the amp clean and kick it with the pedal.
Why is that? Because you've got those two channels and the attenuators. Is there?
Well, I like to use a little bit of delay.
Oh, okay.
And and it doesn't have an effects loop, but I never was into messing around with effects loops anyway. So, I just, you know, and I've messed with it both ways. So I've just found, for consistency's sake, I just set it kind of clean and kick it over with the pedals, and I don't have to worry about all that kind of.
You know the Power Station? Are you familiar with the Power Station? I don't know if you can see it. The Fryette Power Station. Oh, well, that's an incredible device. Let me see if it's unplugged. I can show it to you. Yeah, I'm going to show it to you. So this handy device right here. Basically this, you plug your amp, you know, the amp out that would normally go to the speaker into this thing,
right?
And then out of this thing you go to the speaker. So this is in between the amp and the speaker, and it's got an effects loop. So basically you're getting all the distortion from your amp, and then you've got an effects loop in this thing. So you put all your delays and all that fun stuff that you wouldn't want to put with. Yeah, and then it's got some other controls. It's got a volume, it's got a presence, a depth control for. It's got a couple of the tonal things that you can adjust, and so you can get the loudest Marshall that you have at any level, and then you can have an effects in it. It's a brilliant device, man. I really recommend it because it brings a lot more flexibility to amps that aren't really necessarily that flexible. Excellent. That's a good thing to check out. For, you know, if you ever wanted to explore, because then you could, again, be as loud as you want with any amp, and have your effects wherever you want it.
Love it. So you've got so many different records out under your own name, but you've got a brand new one out, or at least 2025. I forget that it's already 2026, and it's called Rhythm and Leads Guitar.
There's a funny story about that. It's kind of a goofy name for a record, but that the picture on the cover, you know, the whatever 1 by 1 inch, not even that. If you look on it online, is a picture of me and my friends playing guitar in front of one of my friends' house. I grew up kind of a lower middle class kind of scenario, and all my friends were Mexicans, you know, and so we played Beatles songs, and this is a picture of my friends, you know, Pedro and Jesse and Fernando and me, this white kid with red hair. And you know, people ask me, so do you play, you know, remember, did you play guitar? Oh, do you play rhythm or lead? I go, I play rhythm and leads. So I not just one lead. I could play. Right. I could play "Keep on Shuglin," the solo of that. "Proud Mary." I could probably name maybe 5 or 10 solos I can do, leads. So yeah, rhythm and leads guitar. That was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title. Now, about all those records, in about 10 years ago, some friends of mine who had hired me to do some sound-alikes for their company. Their company was called Wave Group Sound, and they provided sound-alike for a game called Karaoke Revolution and Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And so when they first started, it was all about doing sound-alikes. And then eventually they were like these big video game companies got so much money that they would just license masters. So that part of their job went away. But they were doing this company, Wave Group, they were doing sound design stuff for like when you turn on a speaker, a jawbone, or one of those Bluetooth speakers. So they did a lot of that kind of stuff too. So after that, whole company got bought out by or absorbed into Facebook or Meta, as it's called now. Okay. And so my two friends started what they call the Facebook Sound Collection, which is essentially just library music for anyone that's on Instagram or Facebook could use all these songs for free charge. So they had me, they hired me to be one of the content creators. And so between that time and now, I have written 257 songs.
Good Lord.
And the great thing about it is it's interesting to talk about because when I say it's library music, people get the idea of that, it's like elevator music or on hold music or whatever it is.
Right.
But they, Will Littlejohn, he's of the couples, Will and Leslie. Will was in a band that opened up for Bourgeois Tag, so he's been familiar with my work all along. And so he goes, I know you can do lots of different things, Lyle, so just do whatever you do. There's all kinds of people on Instagram and Facebook. They don't have to be hit singles. They could be anything you want, all instrumental.
Right.
And in 2020, they said, Meta or Facebook, we're going to let all our content creators, if they want, you could release this music on all the streamers. So in 2020, I released 18 records of curated material from that 200 odd songs.
Sure.
And so a lot of those records that you see, you will see on Apple Music or Spotify, it's all from that program. But including the rhythm and leads, all that stuff was written for that program. But if you listen to it, it doesn't sound like library music by any means. It really is. No. It's kind of a cheat. So it's been a really amazing way. It's like basically having a patron of the arts, is saying, I really like what you do. We're just going to give you money to do what you do. And, over 10 years time, or 8, around that amount of time. So it's been fantastic having that program, on top of everything else I was doing. So that really explains the prolific nature of having these jobs kind of collide all together at the same time.
Love it. So what does a day look like for you these days? I mean, what's your day-to-day kind of life as a musician these days?
Well, one thing that I had never done up until fairly recently is I've never done basically what you're doing, or a lot of people do, which is go out and play their own music. So it's my work has generally been in service of other people as a sideman, a composer, whatever. But I have all this music that I've written. Like, well, why? How come I'm not out playing this music? So I've just embraced that recently, and I have
beautiful.
Doing a show at the Baked Potato in March, and another one at another place in San Pedro in the same month. So I'm just doing that. That's kind of what I'm doing now. The scoring has slowed down quite a bit for me, and session work is less too. So I still do it from time to time, but now I'm just concentrating on just doing what I do, which has been really rewarding. Playing my own music.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful thing.
I mean, you're doing it. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, it's it's been a lot of fun with this thing with my son, obviously,
amazing. Incredible.
And it's just a lot of fun, as you said, when you get to play your own music and and people come out and they want to hear it, and you don't have to worry about what are we going to have to play tonight in order to go over? We just play our shit. Okay,
yeah,
it's beautiful.
Do you ever do any double bill scenarios with your band and another band, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, if you need an opener, man, I'm all here. I'm here for you.
Oh, that'd be awesome, man. That would be incredible. Now, how'd you meet our buddy Woody?
Yeah.
Were you doing a session with him, or were you doing a gig?
I met Woody through. There's a guy in town. His nickname is Scrote. His real name is. Yeah,
I love it already.
He's kind of a musical Pied Piper. He puts together these sort of tribute concerts, and so he put together a David Bowie tribute thing, and with a bunch of local musicians, and Woody was one of those people, and we did a Peter Gabriel tribute. That I spoke to Screw. I said, can we do like a Peter Gabriel one? Because we'd done a Burt Bacharach one, and we did what was the other one? Can't remember. There was a few of them, but I wanted to do David Bowie. A Peter Gabriel one, and he said, I got to know this guy named Woody. I said, let's bring him in, and he freaking floored me, man. He just he came on this gig, and he just knew all the words. He knew everything, and in fact, we recorded one of our shows, and I've mixed them and made videos, and they're online. It's called Saluting Peter Gabriel. And so there's several songs, maybe 5 or 6 songs with Woody. We had one song with Colin Hay from Men at Work sing a track, and a couple other people. But yeah, Woody is just what can I say, man? He's just he's an amazing musician, an incredible human being, and what a singer and player, and just So he told me his whole history with you, and that's so amazing.
Yeah, we go back quite a ways.
That's great.
To when we were wee lads. Man. So crazy. It's a crazy small world.
Yeah, the music community. Yeah, you end up beating maybe not everyone, but close to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, are there musicians you'd like to work with that you haven't yet? Are some things brewing with some collaborations that are kind of fulfilling some dreams that you've had in terms of working with some folks? Anything like that brewing?
Well, there's certainly people I would like to work with. I would love to do anything for Peter Gabriel. To me, he's like the gold standard. I mean, I got for me, it was, for the longest time, it was Peter Gabriel and Sting. And luckily, I've got to do one of those. So I toured with Sting in 2000.
And how was that, if you don't mind
incredible.
Me asking?
In fact, that whole story was pretty wild, because I went to Guitar Center, and I ran into Josh Freese, the drummer. And so Josh said, "Hey man, you never guess what I'm going to be doing, because I'm going to be playing with Sting." I went, oh my God! Oh. To me, the Police was huge. In fact, I was in a 3-piece band, and we did a lot of Police songs. When I was 20 years old, 19.
Yeah.
Oh, so much, so great. And so he and I said, well, tell me about the band, because it's really cool. It's actually going to be a 4-piece band. Like, it's kind of like the Police with another guitar player, with an extra guitar player. And and you know how much I love the Police. He goes, yeah, I know. You'd love to do this gig. And I said, that was kind of the end. I go, well, great. So he went off and did some touring with Sting in that 4-piece setup. And he called me one day. He goes, Lyle, do you have some time to talk? I went, shut up. Because if somehow I just had a feeling that's why he was calling me.
Right. And
sure enough, he said, yeah, we're just looking at getting a different guitar player. And, I know that you'd be into it. And as a matter of fact, I already gave your number to Sting's manager, and she's probably going to be calling you. And just, while we're on the phone, I call waiting, and I see a 212 number. I went, oh shit, that's probably her. So she talked to me and said, Sting would like to hear you play, and we're going to be in New York. Could you come out and play? Do an audition. And she said when it was, and now at that exact time, I was working on 40-Year-Old Virgin, and we were getting towards the end, so deadlines were looming. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll have to check with my current situation to see if I can go to New York for a day or two to do this. So I got the okay, which was cool, and went to do the audition, which was pretty wild. It was at SIR, and they'd sent me a couple songs to learn in preparation for the audition. It was Message in a Bottle, like something like Driven to Tears. I mean, stuff I knew and I even played, many years ago. So we played 4 or 5 songs, and it was pretty funny because it went pretty well. I thought it went great, and Sting said, "Well, you want to play? What would you like to play?" And I said, "Anything. I'm somewhat familiar with your catalog." And he laughed, and so we played a few more Police songs and a couple Sting songs that I actually knew, and it's okay. Well, Sting said we sat down because we got a couple other people, and it was, in fairness, we love what you did, but fairness, I have to see some of these other people we have scheduled. And I said, that's no fucking good. He goes, oh, this guy's he has a sense of humor. I like that. So I was kind of on cloud 9, and I'm just like, I want this. I wanted it so bad because, again, he's the top of the heap for me, in terms of playing pop music.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, in fact, that night I met with a friend of mine, and we went to go see Oz Noy play. And so it was the first time meeting Oz and getting my mind blown over that monster of a player. So as the next day, the plane is taxiing into the runway at LAX, and I open up my phone and I see a voice message from 212. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just couldn't wait to call the number. So as it's still taxiing, I call, and it's the manager, and she says, Sting is wondering whether you would be able to play this show. It's going to be called Live 8, which is kind of like a Live Aid, but for that time, it was 2004. And I said, well, yes, of course. What would be the time scenario? She says, well, it'd probably take about a week because between rehearsals and doing the show. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is right when I'm finishing this movie.
Right.
The director's not going to let me go for a week in them, as we're approaching the runway. And I'm just like, I couldn't barely sleep that night because I knew I was going to see Judd and Judd Apatow the next morning. And so I go in there and I'm talking to the music supervisor and the film editor, and I explain the situation. I said, well, congratulations, but I don't think so, Lyle. I mean, we've got an audience preview coming up. And so Judd walks in and says, hey, Lyle, how'd it go? And I went, well, it went really well. And in fact, he told them the whole story. And they want me to be gone for this time. And he goes, well, I'd really love to do it if it's any possible way, without hurting this thing. And so he looks at the calendar and he goes, yeah, we'll make it work. Anyway, so for this first cue, I'm thinking, and so he goes right into business, and I'm just exploding inside because I'm thinking he's not going to let me do this because basically from what the music editor and film editor said, that I don't think so. And so I was just on freaking cloud 9. So that ended up doing the show, and backstage, and there's Paul McCartney, and there's Elton John walks up to me and talking to his good bass player, and The Who sitting on the side of the stage watching The Who play. So it was just one of the most exciting times in my life. Yeah, it was great. So
so how long did you do that?
2 years. It was mostly a major tour and some one-offs. So yeah, very exciting time.
That's not small.
Yeah,
that's a huge thing.
Because a movie that while the tour I did with Sting during that summer was right when the movie came out, and it was 2 weeks #1, like I mentioned, and he's toasting me, congratulations, awesome. And I'm like, wow, how did I get here? I'm just a kid from San Jose. Crickets.
San Jose, that was a Freddie King song.
A Freddie King song, was it?
Yeah,
I only know the Dionne Warwick one.
Indeed. Do you know the way to San Jose? Yes. Yes, indeed. Well, listen, my friend, thanks so much for taking some time to talk. This has been absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad we got a chance to hang, albeit virtually.
I feel like I have a bunch of questions to ask you, but maybe we'll just have to do that separately. I mean, I'm just so blown away over your musicianship and your playing and your singing and everything.
Oh,
no, it really
thank you
is.
so much.
I saw you at a NAMM show, I don't know, 10 to 50 years ago. And you were so amazing on the guitar, and of course your humor is just, I've just geeked out over so many of your videos and yeah, so it really is a delight and honor to speak with you. It's a pleasure, totally.
Well, likewise, my friend, and hopefully when I'm out in California next time, I don't know when that is. I'm due for a trip out there, and we'll see what happens towards the end of the year. Hopefully, I'll find my way out there, but. In the meantime, the road calls elsewhere. The Gristle missile will be loaded up, and we'll be driving.
I've got to come and see you play when you play in the area, or even in San Diego. I'd drive a few hours to see you.
Awesome. Well, I'll keep you apprised.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, my friend, take it easy. I'll keep you apprised too as to when this airs. It'll probably be in a few weeks.
Excellent.
All right, my friend. You have a good one. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks once again to our friends at Fishman and to all you for checking out our show, which we call Chewing the Gristle. We're going to keep on keeping on. See you soon.